Family gatherings rarely happen as neatly as we imagine. By the time I arrived at my grandparents' village home, the oyster cakes were already frying. Some relatives were already there. Some had decided not to come. And when lunch began, people ate at different times. Still, the old stove kept burning, and the house slowly became noisy again. My grandparents lived in the countryside. This three-story house was built by my eldest uncle around 1995. It looks old now. Outside, my grandfather still grows vegetables and keeps chickens. There is a well beside the kitchen, and the family still uses a wood-burning stove. This house is not very comfortable by today's standards, but it is still where my mother's side of the family gathers. My mother had arrived early after buying food in town. When I got there, she and one of my aunts were already frying oyster cakes. My grandmother kept feeding wood into the stove. Oyster cakes are a local fried snack made with oysters and batter. They are best eaten straight from the oil. My grandfather said the ones made at home were much better than those sold outside because we use more ingredients. He ate 4 that day. In the living room, my grandfather talked with my uncles. Some of the children sat nearby, looking at their phones. 2 younger relatives had chosen not to come. There is no air conditioning here and no Wi-Fi. For them, the village feels boring. I understand that. A place can feel like home to one generation and an inconvenience to another. A neighbor came over with a sweet corn from her own field. In the village, food often moves from one household to another. Today, she brought corn. On another day, my grandmother may send her some oyster cakes. No one keeps an exact account. This is simply how people stay connected. Beside the well, my aunt washed baskets and cookware. She was preparing for the lunch. Lunch did not begin with everyone sitting around one table. The oyster cakes were still frying, so the children ate first. My sister and brother-in-law arrived later. Some adults ate while others were still cooking. My grandmother kept moving between the stove, the kitchen, and the table. She served soup to my uncle and then to my father. She is usually the busiest person at every family gathering. She does not sit down until everyone else has something to eat. Some people show affection with words. My grandmother shows it by keeping food coming. My grandfather shows his happiness by talking, eating, and watching people come and go. The gathering was not complete. and it was not orderly. But maybe family life is rarely complete or orderly. My eldest uncle lives in town now, but he still comes back to the village often. After lunch, he sometimes plays mahjong with the people nearby. He told me he only plays small games to pass the time, not to gamble. The village is still part of his social life, even after he moved away. Before I left, my second uncle and my grandfather were picking long beans in the garden. My young nephew played in the soil beside them. 3 generations were sharing the same small patch of ground. I left soon after lunch because my son had arranged to play basketball with a friend. Some people arrive late, some leave early, some do not come at all. But someone still lights the stove, prepares the food, and waits. Maybe that is how a family tradition stays alive.